support
I don't think I saved the videos. Oh, yeah, we didn't. Anyways, we went to
Are we starting?
We're starting.
I think you should not when they graduate and I graduate and yeah, but they're trying to watch me in Florida. What? So it was like outside and then we were messing around. You were there.
All right, guys, let's get rolling here, please. As we get started today, just a recap of kind of what we're doing here. Tomorrow, we're going to start in earnest and with a focus, the civil rights movement. And what I tried to do yesterday, and we're going to continue, I think, to try to do today, is to understand, why this movement was needed, why it was so impactful, and the types of obstacles that African Americans were working to overcome through this particular movement. And as we get started, what I really would like to try to do today is to help you to understand, the conditions, I suppose, in place at the time that this movement begins. I've got over here, I don't know if any of you ever pay attention to the bulletin boards that I put over here, but I always try to put something up there that is obviously tied to what we're covering at the time. I usually try to have them be as primary document driven as I possibly can. And the way that I've got this set up over here now is I've sort of got these 5 elements here. And over here on the left, I've got one that comes from seemingly a very early period of time, certainly much earlier than the civil rights movement itself. Bo, I'm going to ask you to help me out here. Over on the far left, what is the title of that particular document? And the year on it? Okay, so we're talking well before the 1950s. But what I want you to understand is sort of what we looked at yesterday, what the prompt is all about, is that slavery is obviously gone. And that at this point, with the 15th Amendment, African Americans are not only free, but technically they have been made American citizens. And according to the 15th Amendment, does anybody remember what the 15th Amendment, what did it do? That's 13. What? Voting. Not all people, but it gave black men the right to vote. Right? And this particular document that's over here, it's obviously a painting, but it's a painting which is depicting the hope that a lot of African Americans felt following the passage of the 15th Amendment. And I want to stress one key point here. And I want to make sure everybody's listening, because this is an extremely important point here. Okay, once we get to the civil rights movement starting tomorrow, all right, that's a movement that will start in the 50s, move its way into the 1960s. And I think most people believe that it culminates with the photograph behind Bo, which shows President Lyndon Johnson signing a piece of legislation called the Civil Rights Act of 1964. All right, that's a huge moment. All right, it's a big deal. There's no doubt about it, and I don't want you to think anything else other than the reality that it's an important moment. It extends a lot of equality in many ways, and African Americans were certainly very happy about it. But I think that if you were to have asked Dr. King what he believed, and I'm conjecturing here a little bit, but I feel confident saying this, and what did he believe was the big moment of this movement? I don't think he would point to that. I think he would point to a law passed the next year in '65 called the Voting Rights Act. There's something about being able to vote, having that right eligible to you, that has always been a real and true symbol of you being an American, a citizen, being on an equal level. Your vote is your voice. And for a long stretch of American history, that has not been a voice that has been extended to all Americans. So to be able to have that, to really be able to vote, was a real moment. That was a symbol. And that's why the painting that's over here is a painting that demonstrates so much hope. You know, yes, we're free, but now we've been given a voice. We've been given the opportunity to vote. And you know, what I'd like to, I guess, try to help you guys understand is that this is 1870, and we're talking about a movement in the 1950s. And so what you've got here is a situation where there are high hopes, but then the realities are going to prove to be much, much different. That's why the civil rights movement had to happen. That's why it is as impactful as it is. So along with that visual, I'm also going to have you guys work today with a primary document that honestly, it's one of my favorite documents that we will work on in this entire class. Now, I've used that term a lot, primary document. What does that term mean? What is a primary document? What? From the exact source? Part of it? Okay, that's the key. It's all about the timing of the document. It had to have been produced in the time period. So that photograph behind Bo, is that a primary document? Yeah. He's signing this law. The photograph was taken at that time. That makes it a primary document. You know, if you were to read a journal written by a Civil War soldier talking about the Battle of Gettysburg, and you look at the date on it, and it says July 3rd, 1863, that would be a primary document because he's writing it while he's experiencing it. And we've, you know, if you think back, we've used a ton of documents in this class, whether they be written, whether they be photo, music, it doesn't matter as long as it's produced in the time period that you're talking about. Okay, like your textbook. If you have a textbook in here, which you don't, but if you were to have a textbook, would that be a primary document? No. That was written 3 years ago, talking about the Revolutionary War. No. That's not a primary document. All right? So what we're working with today is a primary document. And like I said, it's one of my favorites. And I want to give you a little bit of background here on the document that you're going to be working with. It's a letter. So it's relatively short. And who do you think wrote this letter? Yes. Let's see if anybody wrote the word. We call it the Jordan Anderson letter because it was written by Jordan Anderson. There we go. All right, now who is Jordan Anderson? Jordan Anderson is a former slave, now a freed man. He writes this letter in August of 1865. Is the Civil War still going at that? August 1865. No, it's done. It's done. Yeah, the war officially ends in April, so it's been over for about 5 months. All right, and so you know, it's the war is over. The South is lost. Slaves are freed. All that's done. All right. Now, what is Jordan Anderson's story? Jordan Anderson, like I said, was a slave. He worked on a plantation in Tennessee, and as the Union Army swept through Tennessee, they came upon his plantation and they, for lack of a better word, liberated him. They give him his free papers, and he, his wife, and their children, who miraculously have managed to stay together on the same plantation. That's a big deal. If you know anything about slavery, you know that oftentimes families were broken up. One of the many, many dark points of slavery. His family managed to stay together. They're freed. And his family gets off that plantation, moves to Ohio, into a community that respects these freed slaves. He gets a job, moves into a home. You know, things are better. Things are certainly better. All right. So now that the war is over, that plantation is still there in Tennessee, and his former owner is now coming back to that plantation. And, he's got to get it working again. He's got to farm it. But he's got a pretty big problem now. What is that? Yeah, he doesn't have any workers. They've all been freed, and most of them have gone on their separate ways. So the challenge that he has now is, in order to get this working, he's got to get new workers, and he's only really got one option, and what is that? We're going to get to that. But more simply, he's going to have to hire people, right? He's going to have to hire workers to work this farm. The problem is that in the South, it's not like there's this vast pool of experienced farm workers to hire. Who did the farming in the South? The slaves, right? Now, some of those slaves are going to go back because they don't know anywhere different or better. They're going to go back and they're going to work for their former masters, this time as paid workers. But not every plantation is going to have that. In this case, this guy's plantation doesn't have that luxury. And so, he's going to do what Ethan suggested. Write letters to your former slaves asking them to come back. I don't know about you, but that's insane. Like, I don't know where you get the, how do I want to say it? I don't know how you get the sand to say, you know what, I get it. I enslaved you and generations before you. But can we just say water under the bridge? Can we just say bygones? And could you just come back and work for me? Where do you get that type of courage? I don't know if that's what it's called, but where do you get that to write your former slaves and say, my bad. It's all good. Come on back. Let's work together. I can't imagine how that would make sense in your mind. But that's what has happened with Jordan Anderson. He has gotten a letter from his former master asking him to come back to Tennessee and work for him. Now, I want you to read this letter, this reply that Jordan Anderson is going to send to his master. And I love this document for two reasons. One, I'm a big fan of sarcasm. And this letter is extremely sarcastic and very passive-aggressive. And I dig it. Because I kind of feel like this is a former slave finally getting the chance to, speak back to his master and tell him what he thinks. Now, he writes it, it's sarcasm. So he writes it would seem very formally, very nicely. But if you really pay attention, you can just sense the mental middle finger that's being used in this reply. I really enjoy that. I chuckle at it. It's very funny. There's a couple parts in here that are just, I don't know, maybe I'm a nerd for it, but I think are outright hilarious. All right, because I feel like I can see this guy holding this letter like, are you kidding me? Are you serious? And then he gets a chance to write this. I can just picture it in my head. But beyond that, and more serious note, I think what you've got here is you've got a newly freed slave who's communicating what he believes is now going to happen. The foundation of that hope. And my heart goes out to him because I want to say, you know what, man? Things aren't going to get all that much better. But you get some of those hopes coming through in this reply, right? So here's how this is going to work. You're going to get two sheets. One is what I'm calling now think sheets, where you're going to record your answers. Everyone needs to have one of these, and everyone will be turning these in. Now, as far as how you do this, you are allowed to work with a partner if you would like, because I think it would be good to have somebody to kind of read the letter with and bounce some ideas off of and so forth. So I'm going to send around the letter, but try to keep just one copy of the letter per partner pair. And if you don't get done, I think most of you probably will by the end of the period. But if you don't get done, I will take these. I will recollect these to reuse during 7th period. But if you need this, if you want to write on it, underline things, whatever, that's fine with me. I'll take back some of the blank ones. So take one for your partner pair, and then send the rest of these on. This is 13. Okay, once everybody's got the answer sheet, then I will explain how this works. Okay. All right, here we go. Listen carefully. Here are your instructions for the answer sheet. Okay, you have 4 boxes here. Listen carefully. You have 4 boxes here, and in each of these boxes is a statement, is a claim that is being made. And what I want you to do with your partner is to read that claim. This is before you even get to the letter. Read the claim and ask yourself, do you think that that is going to be true or not? All right, so for claim number 1, it says freed slaves began to have new educational opportunities. If you believe that that is, in fact, going to be true, then simply check agree. If you think, nah, that's probably not going to happen, check the disagree box. All right, and I would like for you to do that for each of the claims before you start to spend any time with the letter. Read the claim, and where it says before reading, decide if you agree with that or you disagree. Of course, there's not going to be a wrong answer there because you don't know. It's basically us setting a hypothesis on what we think is going to happen. All right? After you've done that, then get into the letter. And remember that he is writing this letter as a reply to his former master, who has asked for him to move back to Tennessee and to begin working for him again. As he writes this response, I think he is going to answer all 4 of these claims. And, you may be proven correct, or you may find out that you were actually incorrect, and that's okay. But what I'd like for you to do, after you read the article or you read the letter, let's say that after reading the letter, you end up agreeing. Yeah, it does look like freed slaves began to get more education, better education. Then check the agree, and then if you could provide me 1 line from the letter that you believe is evidence to support the point that you're making. Maybe a line there that says, here's the line that talks about freed slaves getting better education. Just write that in the space under where it says evidence. Now, we're going to have some time here. I'll come around and answer questions and work with you a little bit. I'm not going to have this due until tomorrow. In fact, I'd actually like to start tomorrow's class by kind of going through this, making sure that we were able to pull from it what we need. But for now, I want you to spend some time with this letter, and I hopefully you'll be able to spot the sarcasm pretty easily. But take your time, think about this. You've got a partner here to kind of talk to. Like I said, if you want to underline parts of the document, that's fine. I don't have to have these back. It's just that if you end up with extra blank ones, then I'll recollect those up here at the front. All right, let's get to work on this. Let me know if you have any questions. Yes. Remember, start first by reading the claims and deciding if you agree or disagree with those claims. Do that before you get into the letter.